Hello and welcome to Driven by Doing podcast. Today we have Sam Gupta from Ontario, Canada. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Venki. Super excited to talk to your fun listeners.
Thank you, Sam. And Sam is also a podcast host called WBSRocks, which is for business growth with ERP and business systems. And Sam is a super connector on LinkedIn, and he has got some great connections and great networking skills, which I have been fascinated how he kind of really build that network. And today we are going to deep dive into how did Sam get to where he is today and what excites him the most. So let's go back to your old days, Sam. So you're originally from India. So let's go back there
Yeah.
and explain us how did you get your first opportunity right out of college?
Well, so my first opportunity. So I am an electronics engineer by training, and I don't recall doing anything related to electronics engineering. So during my college days, what I was doing is, I was working on a software part time, and then we were trying to sell it to restaurants, libraries, and trying to build a startup from that. Honestly speaking, nobody really bought it. We knew that we could not feed our family. We were sort of talented, and we thought, we can probably build a company. But as such, it didn't get anywhere. So I personally wanted to get into the corporate world. So my very first job, wasn't as exciting. I got a job at a manufacturing company, in fact. Okay, and it was they actually did the cement manufacturing. I don't know if we are familiar with that. That's they use this in buildings, right, to construct the buildings. So yeah, so I actually got a job there, but then I stayed there only for like 15 days, and the president came to us, and he was like, you know what, this is not for you guys. You guys should not be here. The only reason why I hired you guys is because we wanted to get some real good talent from good colleges, and that's why. But I mean, you guys should not be building a career here, and that was like a shock that we were getting this from the president. And this guy was super emotional guy, and he's like, I have my own kids, and I definitely don't want to see you guys here. I can see super good talent in you guys, so just don't stay here. And we were like, okay, I mean, that's a great advice. So then we started searching for other jobs where we could find, right? So then I landed up in Mumbai, I guess. Did a couple of gigs there for 3-4 months. 3-4 months, and then I got into Tata. Was my first real job at TCS. So I was there for what 5-6 months, and they recognized that I probably should come to North America.
Wow.
So yeah, so I landed up here. That's my journey. So do you want me to go on the journey? What do you
Yeah.
want me to do
So
right now?
now you mentioned a couple of things right out of college. So
Yeah,
you are having the entrepreneurial mindset right from the get-go. I could definitely see that.
yeah,
And you started working your first job, and then now you came to the Tata Consulting Services.
yeah.
That's how you landed up coming to the US. Is that correct?
Yes, yes,
Got it.
yes.
So, and then you worked here in the North America, both in US and Canada. What was your experience like back then in the early days after coming here?
Well, so, if you look at me, or anybody who looked at me, my waist measured like 25 and a half. Okay. I was literally, very young. Okay. Very lean, very tiny. And I was walking on the floor of a investment bank, and these guys were like, who's this kid? Where is he coming from? And
Are you consulting back then for the investment firm that you are
Yes,
working?
and I was a consultant, and these guys were like, in their 50s and 45, and these guys were like super sharp, super experienced, and like, just a kid hanging out there, right? And trying to coach them on digital transformation. It was crazy. So these guys used to make jokes about me that I don't know who this guy is. He sort of seems to know what he's talking about, but I don't trust him because he's super young.
Hmm.
So yeah, that was a funny story. So I stayed there for roughly a year or so. Then I moved to Bay Area. Then I consulted with some of the technology firms there. I don't know whether you guys know VeriSign or not. VeriSign, they used to be in the security certificate space. They did your digital tokens that you use as the one-time password. So I was involved in the digital transformation there in some of the IT projects. So again, with Tata, I used to do a lot of work, and then I moved into I did a little bit of banking and then ERP. So yeah, all over the place, but mainly focusing on the financial systems overall from there on. After Tata, I spent some time with one of other SIs that is called Marlabs. We did a lot of work in the airline space, in the manufacturing, so many different platforms, primarily focusing on the financial systems and ERP is what my core was always. But then somewhere in 2011, 2012, I started doing my own consulting. I was consulting with a lot of different startups, back then. I just didn't know what I was doing, to be honest. Okay. And then I started working on some of my own startups. There were a bunch of them. I don't know, at least 10 or 15 different ideas that I have worked on. ElevatIQ is probably the most mature one that is really prevalent in the market at this point of time. I have explored ideas such as you talk about it. I mean, medical device to the passport for co-working spaces called co-hopping was one of these startups that I worked on. In the real estate market, then we explored some ideas in the funding space. So yeah, all over the place is what I can say. Many different startups.
Now that you talked a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey, let's deep dive into that a little bit more. Whenever like we think about ideas, we always wanted to pursue them, right? So
Yeah.
what were those initial thoughts that you had about bringing a new startup, right? Like, let's say you had great experience trying different ideas, because a lot of people are afraid even to try different ideas. Sometimes we always look for, hey, like, this may not work for these 100 different reasons, but it's always great to see entrepreneurs like you to kind of like really test the idea, like to see what was the real potential. So what do you say for people who are thinking about creating something new from scratch to really bring their idea to life?
So what I'm gonna suggest, and again, if I were a young entrepreneur 10 years back, if you had asked me, then I would probably have a different opinion. But right now, after trying so many different things, my opinion changed. And I'm gonna ask for your core expertise, whatever you are good at. Okay, reflect on that. I don't recommend anybody starting startups right from the school, just because you don't know how world works yet. Okay, you might not be able to feed your family. Again, if you are young, you have decent backing from your family. If you want to try that, great, but typically the chances of success are very low. Very few startups become successful if somebody start from the college. Right? You have to gain some sort of industry experience. You have to figure out what industries care for, especially if you are targeting for the industrial or the let's say the B2B startups, right? If you are going for, let's say, B2C startups, completely consumer based, maybe you are creating an app, focusing on consumers, something like Facebook, then it's a different story. Then it's completely different story. But uh, chances of success of an app like Facebook is slim to none, in my opinion. Okay, it's somebody needs to be super lucky in terms of getting that successful.
Mhm.
Now, getting, where you should look for an idea, go back to your industry, go back to your core expertise. So let's say if you have worked in the logistics industry for 5 years, explore what are the problems that you are seeing. Talk to the salespeople, because salespeople are the ones who have the real knowledge of the field, to be honest. Okay, they are the ones who are closest to the customers. So talk to as many salespeople as you can talk, in terms of validating your ideas. And if salespeople are rejecting, they are rejecting for a reason. Do not pursue anything that salespeople say that, what, this is not going to work. It's not going to work because they are spending their days and nights trying to sell that stuff. And, industries don't care for that, right? So listen to as many salespeople. So yeah, my advice is going to be listen to your core, focus on your core, and figure out what you might have the subject matter expertise on, and based on that, create an idea.
Mhm. Thanks for sharing that great insights there, Sam. Because typically we kind of also hear people saying that, hey, like you should pursue your ideas while in college because that is the most easiest way to actually pursue an idea because there is less risk. But I think the insight that you gave us today is get that first job, get exposure to what's happening in the industry, and now you have gained some expertise, and also talk with people around you, especially salespeople, that could help alleviate what is the real pain point that you're trying to solve.
Yeah, exactly. And when you are starting out of college, you don't really have the relationships, and relationships are going to be the key factors. You don't really have, unless you are born genius, which is rare, right? Some people have that from the family back. If you have business family background, right, and you have done this for, let's say, 8 or 9 years, then it's a different story, because you might know accounting, you might have sales skills, you might have sold. I had business background, significant business background in my family, and that's why I could do all of this, but still I wasn't successful because I did not have business background in the software. I was trying something else. I had no idea how the sales cycle of software would work, right? That's why I failed to begin with. So let's say if you have background in manufacturing, and if your father sold CPG good for the similar industry that you are going to sell, then you are probably going to have tons and tons of connections in that industry. You probably know how to create that product, right? But if you are trying something else, then you have to spend at least 2 to 3 years just figuring out how the sales cycle of that product is going to work, how the production cycle of that product is going to work. And typically that's how much it takes to figure out the product market fit. Now, if you have family backing and somebody who's supporting you financially for 2 to 3 years, and your team as well, then it's a different case. If you got funding, if your investors trust you, that, okay, you know something. But the very first thing that investors are going to look at is, okay, in your team, who has the sales experience? And if you don't have the sales experience, then obviously investors are not going to be excited, because they cannot trust you, unless, again, if you're working on a technology which is probably, if they can see value in that, probably it's going to be sold for $1 billion, then it's a different story. If you could be like super genius programmer and you might have created a technology that could be extremely beneficial, then it's a different case. But it's very rare to see that.
Hmm. Thanks for sharing that again. Like, the value that the sales professional bring to the product is absolutely amazing. And even though we had amazing products, at the end of the day, it comes down to the salespeople to really explain what is the problem that they are trying to solve for the business. And now, again, given your technology background, now you're an expert in ERP, building ERP systems that are scalable. How did you get into ERP, in the sense like you started as a consultant and now that is your core business?
Yeah.
Now, talk us a little bit more about ERP and how the whole technology has revolutionized in the last couple of decades.
So I was actually consulting in the enterprise space, right? So I did a lot of consulting. Now, if you look at the enterprise space, I was trying to figure out, how to build a startup. And one of the things that everybody needs to figure out is who's going to pay and how you are going to sell your offering. I mean, we can all be expert at something. So, obviously I was very good at technology. But if I could not figure out how to sell and market my offerings, who's going to pay it, right? So that's the biggest challenge always. Now, in the enterprise space, it's as you know, it's very competitive. There are bigger vendors that you are going to be competing with. So for example, let's say if you look at the ERP space, now if I set up my company in the ERP space, focusing on the enterprise, then I'm probably going to be competing with companies like Accenture, companies like Tata. Okay. And obviously they have deep relationships in these market, right? It's very, very, very hard to compete with them. They have the manpower. And even financially, it's extremely hard to compete with them, because end of the day, you are going to require people that are going to support you. And it's the same set of people, especially when you are working in the service space, right? Unless you are a product business, then it's a different case. In our case, we are primarily a consulting or service focused business, right? And we rely on people, we rely on our expertise. So even if I'm able to get, let's say, an enterprise client, based on my credibility, how am I going to get the second client? Okay, so there is limit to scale, and the competition is fierce, and it's even more fierce, because of the economy and everything, right? So we wanted to focus on a market that we can win in. Okay, and that is the SMB market. So yeah, so now I had to figure out, how to succeed in the SMB market, because I had never sold in the SMB market, right? So that took a very long time to figure out be successful in the SMB market. Now, SMB market, if you compare from the enterprise market, it's completely different. You cannot ask for the same dollars that your enterprise clients are going to pay. So if you are an IT consultant, if you are used to of getting, let's say, $100 an hour, $150 an hour, $200 an hour, $250 an hour, that doesn't exist in the SMB space. These guys are starving. Okay. They look for very fixed budget without any risk. They don't understand how programming works or how IT works. They only care for the benefits and how you are going to make them better. So it's a very different market, right? So we wanted to be successful in the SMB market. We wanted to really focus on this market. And we thought that, based on our team's expertise, based on where we are, based on my own expertise, based on the capital that we have in the bank account, SMB would make far more sense, and we are focusing on the SMB products in the ERP space.
Wow. So thanks for bringing that the whole SMB market, because if you look at the whole consulting gigs, it's huge industry. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and you're trying to focus on a niche area. And especially for somebody who has got some amazing experience, just focusing on that niche area might be a great opportunity, because you know the pain points for these customers. And a lot of times when you're talking about startups, that's where it all starts. What is that niche area that I can serve with whatever the capital that I can have in the bank account, right? Now you talked about serving these customers and how important is networking, especially in the SMB market. Do you see clients referring to other clients based upon how well you have performed? And because it's a huge market, even SMB, they have got a lot of different clients in this market, right?
So yeah, I think networking is always important, but strategic networking and watching for time is equally important as well, right? So when I say strategic networking, meaning you need to network in your industry around your expertise, and those are the going to be the people and clients that are going to help you. So getting the first client in any startup is the most difficult task, especially if you are selling the expensive offerings like ERP. Right? So getting that first client is always difficult. If you are selling something like e-commerce, $10 product, then it's a different case. You can probably sell it to your family and you have got your first customer, right? But if you are selling expensive offerings like ERP or any SaaS-based offerings in software, then getting that first client is going to be extremely difficult. So now let's talk about networking, right? So when you get the first client, obviously you are going to go out of your way to help them so that they can trust you, they can trust with the referral as well, because trust is a big factor overall when it comes to the client referrals. So networking is huge, but you need to figure out which are going to be the right channels for networking, which are going to be the right audience for you to hang out with. And I guess I want to touch one more point related to you said, I had a lot of experience in the SMB space. I had a lot of experience in the ERP space. So when you start on the new market, when you start on a new product, each time it does take roughly a year or two. So I had sold ERP before. Okay. I'd sold a different in the ecosystem, but now I moved to a new ecosystem. Okay. When you get into the new ecosystem, understanding the capabilities of the product, understanding that what customers care for, understanding the positioning and messaging that is going to resonate with them is going to be unique to each market, each product, each sort of the customer base. So each time you make a change, you need to figure out how much time it is going to take to understand the market. And these markets actually go at the micro industry level. So let's say if you have sold in the manufacturing, okay, now you are selling to logistics. It's a completely different market. It's a completely different customer. Okay. If you have sold to, let's say, CFO before, and now you are targeting CIOs, again, it's a different market, because what CFOs are going to care for is going to be very different from what CIOs are going to care for. Okay. So it's going to be completely different positioning, because when they land on your page, okay, you might have a landing page. Let's say if you're selling to CFO, it needs to be aligned with the CFO's interest. And that has to be aligned with their resume, to be honest. Okay, that's how it works, because everybody cares for themselves. So if you came to me and if you tried to pitch me, I'm going to think about my own personal interest. That's how everybody thinks. Okay, they have to save their jobs, they have to do their duties. So the positioning is going to be aligned to their resume. So each time you change a positioning or you make any changes in your sales cycle or the product,
Mhm.
that is going to be a new campaign, and you have to test that before you become efficient in that.
Mhm. And in fact, like, thanks for sharing that, Sam. Now you almost mentioned that you have to personalize to their needs and values,
Yeah.
right? That's how you got to optimize your solution to exactly what they are looking for, so that it can be 100% fit. Now, you also mentioned about how difficult it is to get your first customer. Tell
Yeah.
us about your experience. Since you already have consulting background, how did you get your first customer, and how long did you take? You typically mentioned 1 to 2 years in order to get that first customer, right? Like, were you also consulting on the side to build this on the side to be able to, like, get your first customer?
So now, which customer are we talking about for which startup? Because I have been getting, customer for all of these startups, right? And each time I change a startup, the focus is going to change, so the customer is going to be different. So the
Okay.
customers that I actually secured, let's say 8 years back, they are no longer relevant, and I'm not gonna waste time of my contacts
Right.
if the offering is not going to be relevant for them, right? So
Let's
each
talk
time you
about
have to.
the Elevate IQ.
So in case of ElevatIQ, again, I typically don't like to prospect in my own network and friends. That's just me, okay? I just don't like to talk business with my friends. So I try to separate these two things, right? So by the time I started ElevatIQ, I had figured out how to make cold calls.
Mm.
I spent a lot of time in learning how to be efficient with cold calls, to be honest, okay? And so again, there are many different approaches. End of the day, in sales, it's all about time, because you are running against the clock. So if you're doing the startup, let's say, you might have decent backing in your bank just because you have worked for a long time to support yourself, to support your team. But then, your cash is going to be, let's say, for 9 months, 10 months, 18 months. End of the day, you guys are, my family is eating, my team's family is eating, and we are supporting them, right? And especially in the services business, if you are simply bootstrapped, you are not funded by anybody, then the cash is constant. Right? So you are literally running against the clock. Now you have many different marketing channels, many different ideas, and you have to figure out what is the fastest way of acquiring your first customer. So in my case, I figured the easiest way for me is going to be by making as many cold calls as I can. Okay. And now people might argue that cold calls don't work. That's not true. Everything works. It's all about time and efficiency and what your strengths are. In my case, I'm really good at creating email campaigns. I'm really good at cold calling. I can call CFOs, CEOs, and they speak with me. And again, I don't waste their time. I get their interest within 10 seconds, and I can sell it to them. And that's what I did, to be honest. So when I started ElevatIQ, I just started cold calling, man. I started sending emails, and that is the best way of approaching your customers without any cost. Okay. But let's say if you're starting a consulting business, the easiest way for anybody is going to be if you are starting around your core, and if you already have a contact that is willing to give you a shot. That is very hard, though, because I've tried with my personal contacts. I did not get any success, to be honest.
Mhm.
I was losing on my relationships, and then I was not getting any business. So what's the point? Okay. So I started building an targeting list that, okay, these are the customers that are going to care for my offering. Start cold calling. As soon as you start, okay, you are going to be learning a lot. They are going to say either no or yes. If they say no, just ask, why are you saying no?
Yes.
There must be a reason,
Mhm.
right? Don't get offended just because somebody is hanging up on you. They are actually doing a favor on you, to be honest, if they are hanging up on you.
Mhm.
Okay, just because they are saving your time. End of the day, your currency is going to be time.
Mhm.
You're running against time. So anybody who's helping you save your time is your best friend. So the people who are hanging up on you are your best friends. And the people who don't know how to say no, they are your worst enemies. Okay? Just because they are going to waste your time. So again, going back to your question, how did I get my first customer? Cold calls.
And in fact, cold calling is, I mean, it is going to work, Sam. And like, what are the techniques that you used initially, not having the experience of cold calling? Like, did you just call again and again, trying to ask them, like, why did they actually not choose you, and kept on learning as a process, and then you kind of like learn that and got that expertise.
So one of the things that I did, because I came from the enterprise consulting world and I really wanted to figure out how to sell an SMB, right? So I actually worked for a lot of startups for free.
Mm.
Okay. And I tried to learn from people who were 24 years old. And I had no shame in that, to be honest. Okay. I worked for them for free for a very long time just to figure out how to do cold calling, how to win in the SMB market. That's how I acquired the skills of cold calling. I sort of monitored, how they did it. And that was my learning process. And nobody's going to teach you if they pay you, right? Because they expect results from you.
Mm.
So that's the sort of risk that you have to take sometimes when you are trying to acquire a skill. So in my case, I worked for free for a lot of startups. I worked for really sharp people. And again, the person that I worked with, he's amazing. He was 24 years old founder. Obviously, he did not have the skills that he needed to sell in the enterprises, but he was very good at SMB because that's how he started his career. His family background was in accounting, so he was very good at accounting. And he ended up finding a company that employs right now 300 people. So I worked with him, in learning how to execute campaigns. We were doing a lot of LinkedIn campaigns. We were doing a lot of cold calls. We were doing a lot of email campaigns. So that's where I learned. Then I did a lot more work in the big data space. Tried to sell there as well. Got a lot of exposure. Worked with a lot of experienced people, salespeople there. So yeah, so I had to take a lot of risks, man. And sometimes I would go for, let's say, as a consultant, let's say if I was making in 200 300,000 per year or maybe more, or 200 $300 per hour or more, and now I'm not even getting minimum wage.
Mm.
Okay. And I had no complaints.
Is it because you're doing your own thing, the thing that you love, isn't it?
Well, so not everybody can do that, right? I mean, you obviously require your support from your family, and you need to be super driven and passionate, and you need to know what you are doing and why you are doing it.
Mm.
In my case, I was so particular about learning and figuring out these things that I did not care for money. But this is not for everybody. Not everybody can do it. All of my friends actually went to the same school. They went through the same entrepreneurship program that I did at QT. And in my program, they actually teach the process of entrepreneurship, how to build the startup. In fact, that was my sort of the second or third startup, because I was working on these startups since 2012, but then I sort of knew that I probably don't know enough. So I need to get the structured education, and that's why I went to UT to figure this out. So I got some knowledge from there, but nobody really teaches you the sales skills.
Mm.
The
That-
field skills nobody teaches you,
mm.
right? So again, I failed there, but then I had to work for some people, some super bright people, for free to figure this out. So that's how I learned about the cold calling.
Hmm. This is just amazing, Sam. Just learning from your experience, one thing that came out of just having this talk with you is you're you're a constant learner. You always look for the learning experience because you are looking at the long term,
Yeah.
right? So when you have that clear vision of what is that I wanted, you had that path laid out, and it is not easy, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
It is not going to be easy, but the process of learning is actually going to take you, it might take time. And in
Yeah.
fact, cold calling experience, thanks for sharing that, because a lot of people, when we think about just starting a business, we might think, hey, like these campaigns and these people are scaling these products, it's just amazing how people are doing it. But sometimes we don't see the behind the scenes,
Yeah.
right? There is always this knowledge gap that
Yeah.
we kind of like have. And thanks for sharing your experience in doing it, because you went there, you kind of failed, but you wanted to learn, trying to figure this out, working for free. There is always this constant struggle against the things that I really wanted to do this,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm going to figure this out,
Yeah.
right? Now, from that experience from the last 5 6 years, now you are a super connector. Now you know a lot of people. Tell us a little bit about how you build your network, especially on LinkedIn. You're just awesome. You're a LinkedIn influencer. Now tell us and help the listeners why networking is a great skill. When I say networking, it's not just about connecting people, but
Yeah.
adding value to others, whether it's in your own core.
Yeah, so networking has many different attributes, and I'm actually going to touch on the flavors from the LinkedIn perspective. So again, I don't invest time in anything that is not going to give me some sort of value. Okay, so I was never sold. In fact, I mean, see, we were running agency on LinkedIn, as I said, somewhere in 2014, 2015, when LinkedIn was not as restricted, it was not as planned. So we were into the LinkedIn game. In fact, I mean, see, in 2014, I would have read every single LinkedIn richest book out there. Okay. And we were trying to figure out how to make money from LinkedIn. That's what we were trying to figure out. Okay. And that's how we built the agency. But we, as an agency, we were not really successful with LinkedIn there. Okay. We had to change our strategy. And then I did not really believe in LinkedIn, to be honest. I was using LinkedIn for just for the sales, for the outreach. Yes, for the list building, LinkedIn is the best tool. But LinkedIn has far more than just list building and sales. So what you are seeing right now, this is a very different approach. Okay. And the approach, honestly speaking, I started during pandemic because and before this, I was not really into inbound marketing because I told you I had to figure these things out. I was so much into outbound marketing that I did not believe that inbound marketing worked for people. Okay. I was like, I'm calling these guys. I'm so good at it. And I'm going to call everybody, right? And I'm going to get attention of them. And they're speaking with me on a daily basis. I had my cadence built up. I had cadence built up for my team that, we have to get at least 2 leads per week. And I was like, okay, so from the inbound marketing perspective, tell me how that is going to help me, because I'm actually on the phone with my executive and he's not willing to talk to me. So how's inbound marketing going to help me? Because if I am calling them, I'm getting connected with them right on the phone. I'm right there. Okay, I'm standing right there. And you are telling me that a CEO is going to come to my site and they are going to read a blog post and they are going to connect with me. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Okay, so I, honestly speaking, I never believed in marketing. Okay, especially for the ERP play. Yes, you are talking about consumer play, that's a different case. But when you are selling something very expensive like ERP, okay, I did not believe in inbound marketing. Now that perspective changed. When I say I did not believe, I'm not saying that I was never going to do inbound marketing, but it is always about the priority. So my priority was always, okay, how can I get my, let's say, first 10, 20, 15 customers so that I have enough base who are going to pay me, and then I have the cash flow, the predictable cash flow built up, let's say month by month, year by year, and then I can try and test. So yes, I was going to do marketing, inbound marketing, or for that matter, LinkedIn, but my priority was always, which is my fastest channel. And that was always going to be, let's say, cold call, outbound, email, maybe LinkedIn outreach, but that doesn't work either. If you are trying to do the sales outreach, I tried that as well. I tried all the automation that was there with respect to LinkedIn, but that did not work either. Okay. So then I was really trying to figure out how to basically do the inbound marketing. Then I started figuring out, the content, especially during pandemic, because all of my existing contracts were getting canceled. We were not getting any new leads whatsoever. My campaigns started failing. Okay, so the call campaigns that were working before, they started failing. And now we had to figure out how to survive because this is a new world now, right? My emails were not performing. So then we had to figure out, okay, what can I do? So that's when, I want to test new things. Okay. So that's when we started doing inbound marketing. Now, when I started doing my blog, I started learning a lot more about how to do inbound marketing. Okay. So when we did this, obviously we were getting a lot of different services. SEO people would, pitch us that they are, it's going to take 2 years to build the domain, but I will talk to pretty much everybody, whoever, was relevant to me. And I was trying to figure out, okay, how to get this domain ranking up. Okay. So what we did is we actually had our domain ranking from 0 to, I would say, roughly 30. Okay. Within 2 months.
Wow. How do you do that, Sam?
Within 2 months, we are going to talk about that, okay? And when I speak with marketers, because see, I was talking to one SEO agency and they said that, you know what, you are at roughly 1 and it's going to take roughly 2 years. Everybody said that. Everybody said that. Nobody believed. In fact, when I spoke to a marketer and I said, you know what, I did it. And he was like, there is no way. There's no way.
Wow.
Okay, and I did it. And then I was trying to figure out this content game. And as soon as I did this, my leads started flowing.
Mhm.
And then I was getting 2 leads because of my content. I'm still getting.
Mm.
I'm still getting. Okay, and then I didn't have to do any work whatsoever. No cold calls, no emails. So that was a life-changing experience, to be honest.
Mhm.
Okay, then I figured out, okay, what are my competitors doing? What are they doing differently? They were doing the some of the most successful competitors. And by the way, I mean, see, if you look at in the ERP space, if you look at my competitors, they don't understand how to do sales and marketing.
Mm.
Typically, these are consulting shops. They will go to SAP, they'll go to Infor, they'll go to Oracle, and typically they'll get leads from them. Their job is really to consult.
True.
But the market has changed in the last 5 years. Now, even OEMs are asking, okay, what is your value? If you're not bringing any value, then I'm going to go to somebody who's slightly more reliable. So for newer players, it's very hard. Now, if I want to get traction from SAP or Infor, I don't get traction because my brand is newer. The customers are not going to trust. They are going to ask for the references, but we have to find our ways, right? So I was trying to figure this out. So there were only a couple of companies in my space who were doing, let's say, the podcast. Okay, so I felt that they are doing something different. And then for last 3-4 years I was trying to chase a company that is right here, which is called Vision 33.
Mhm.
They had done a lot of paid marketing, they had done a lot of inbound marketing, and I had not even seen that in the ERP space at all. Okay, and so I was trying to figure this out, and then I wanted to mix this with LinkedIn. So now, I didn't start with LinkedIn that, I want to gain my followers. That's not how my LinkedIn story started, or that's not how my referral based marketing started. I started because I was not getting traction on my content. Okay. And I really wanted to build the audience for the podcast because I know that based on the podcast, I can really win on the SEO game. That's how my podcast started. Okay, I really wanted to win on my SEO game. But then when I started the podcast, I figured out, okay, everybody is just spending time on LinkedIn, and there is a reason. And LinkedIn strategy is completely different. They are not doing sales, they are simply talking. They are building relationship, they are building networking, they are referring leads. Okay, and then I looked at some of the existing consultants in the market, how they were getting business. Now these guys never make cold calls. They never they never send out an email. In fact, they don't even understand sales and marketing. So how are they getting any business? And they were getting only because of relationships. Now, how do you build these relationships? That's where the LinkedIn comes. And that's why it's been what, like 2-3 months on LinkedIn. And I already have the attention of one of the top influencers on LinkedIn at this point of time.
That was just amazing, Sam, how you grew up in such a short time, whether it's bringing your platform on search using SEO, and now even on LinkedIn, like you now cross more than 7,000 followers and you're growing very, very fast. And what are those initial strategies that you used in order to build that very quickly?
On LinkedIn is what you're
Yes.
asking? Yeah. So for LinkedIn, basically, I like to be extremely strategic. I try to understand what is happening. That is my always first clue. So I try to analyze what influencers were doing. There are going to be a lot of people who are going to be complaining that, what, influencers don't matter. They don't matter. They, you should not care for influencers. It's just a number game, whatever. I don't look at those things. What I look at is if somebody is successful, there has to be a reason why they are successful. If they are building an audience, why they are building an audience? There must be a reason. If LinkedIn is celebrating their influencers, there has to be a reason. Okay. So I try to analyze the content. I like to listen to people. And I try to, connect with every influencer out there. Okay. And what I did is, to be honest, to get their attention, because from the sales perspective, if I did the cold call and if I want to get attention of a CEO or CFO, how am I going to get it? I need to do something special for them to make that mark, right? In this particular case, I knew that influencers really care for their public image. Okay, they would not do anything that is going to be against their image in public. So what I started doing is I literally started guarding them. I started protecting them. Okay, I started making them look good. So if somebody would challenge, I would argue with them. So I was literally fighting for them, to be honest. Okay, and they saw it. that this guy is very deliberate. He's liking it, he's commenting. And by the way, I mean, see, if you are an influencer, I mean, these are very smart marketers, to be honest. Okay, they don't care if you are simply going to, let's say, lick their butt. That's not what they care for. Okay, so you need to be extremely smart with your own site. You need to be deep. You need to understand their industry. You need to understand them, what they care for, before you make comment. You need to make an informed comment before you can get their attention. Okay, you need to bring value to them. So the reason why some of the influencers got super excited with me is because I got them $1 million introductions. Okay, I got them introductions to, let's say, chains like Tim Hortons, chains like IHOP. Okay, and that is nobody has done that on social media. So now when you bring the, and I did not ask anything in return. The only thing I was doing is I was helping them build their goals. Okay, I was commenting on their post, I was liking their post, I was resharing. I did whatever I could just to support them. They had to notice me. They had to notice me.
And that is the whole point, isn't it, Sam? Providing value even before asking something in return. And especially we can do it in this digital world in order to like really provide that value. And you also mentioned some great points here, especially how you kind of build your network or such a short period of time. One, you provide the value to others, and you just mentioned how you provided like multi-million dollar
Yeah,
just connections just without asking anything in return. And just providing value in comments, because you are eventually helping them
yeah,
reach their goals, which of course they wanted to return the favor however way they wanted at some point, right? If you look at any business over a period of time, it actually builds upon
yeah,
building relationships, and you are very clear with your strategy from the
yeah,
get-go,
yeah,
right? Now you just started your podcast, WBS Spot
yeah,
Rocks, right? And it was just an amazing in that core business, because you're also looking at your
yeah,
competition, and sometimes we kind of overlook that, especially if it is a niche area. It is very important to understand clearly what our
yeah,
competition is doing. And you also touched upon the value of
yeah,
inbound marketing. Initially when you started your startups, you are a pro and like cold calling and emailing, and as time progressed, you immediately switched back into inbound
yeah,
marketing by actually providing. Initially you didn't think that might not work, because traditionally that's what we have all seen people doing it. And sometimes we have to relearn
yeah.
things in order to progress,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah. And again, it's going to go back to execution, right? And priorities. So it's not that I was against inbound marketing or outbound. I preferred the outbound. It's always about, you are running against time. What is going to give you the maximum amount of results in the shortest amount of time, right? So for me, whatever has worked for me, whatever was my strength, it was cold calls. That's why I chose cold calls, because that's what I knew. Okay, it was without any capital. The only thing you need is the phone. Okay, everything is pretty much free in terms of the context. As soon as you get the LinkedIn subscription, that's just $100 per month, which is fairly inexpensive in my opinion, right? So
Mm,
anybody can start a business, especially if you're starting B2B. Just with a phone and just with the LinkedIn subscription, you can do that. But for other things, let's say if you don't have writing skills, in my case, I developed my writing skills at Toastmasters.
mm.
Okay,
That
because
was one common thing between both of us. I'm a Toastmasters and I'm proud of it, because especially coming from Asia, I felt like I was an introvert, and I had to develop these skills in order to really speak my mind.
yeah.
And that was the same case, I'm sure, in case of you. What skills that helped you by growing those skills, Sam?
So yeah, so I was super aggressive at Toastmasters as well. I think I had spent roughly 10 months there. In 10 months, I was VP of PR. I was assistant VP of Ed. I did 10 speeches. I was terrible at speeches, but speed was the name of the game always. Okay, I really wanted to learn fast, and just do it as fast as possible. That's what I did at Toastmasters. So when I was doing VP of PR, I was spending a lot of time in writing the newsletter, interviewing people, understanding from their experience. I met some super exciting mentors and writers. These guys were amazing. I mean, they were super committed in my success, to be honest. Okay. They gave so amazing feedback that I never received in my entire life. Okay. So that's how I probably built my writing skills. And those writing skills I could use when I was doing the inbound marketing. And again, the kind of content I built, to be honest, I had no experience, zero experience in writing. Okay. But when I utilized those skills from Toastmasters, my content was powerful. It was really powerful. It was deep. And nobody could produce that kind of content. And that's why my domain rank went so up, is because my content was the deepest. If you look at the similar content in the market, and Google actually cares for the deep content. Now, typically when you have depth, you are probably going to have a lot of technical jargons that Google does not care for. So the insight needs to be deep. And this is exactly what Neil Patel talks about. If you have heard of him, right?
Yeah.
So Neil Patel, the way he works is, the way he thinks is, he likes to go deep in every topic. People typically, if you look at traditional, publishing company or the media organization, they typically care for, the article needs to be 800 words or 1,000 words, something along those lines. Yes, the length matters, but what matters more is the insight that you are bringing for the customer. In my case, what we started documenting is, okay, what are the burning questions that customers were asking? How can we answer them? So as opposed to them calling us, what about if I put everything online? And that's exactly what I did. In my industry, there was a thing called checklist. And just to download that checklist, you had to give up your emails. Okay, you had to give up your emails, and you have these consultants, they'll charge a lot of money just to walk you through on that checklist. And what I did is I published all that checklist online, and my checklist was better than them. So I got all of that traffic. Right? Other people are getting the content. They are asking for email, and in my case, everything is in public now.
The value add, like every time you are so deliberate about the value add, and you talked about like a lot of different marketing techniques, and especially you brought up about Neil Patel. For some of you who might not know about him, definitely check out his websites. He's one of the great marketers. Especially he touches a lot of these skills that you might need to learn in digital marketing. So definitely check him out.
Yeah, just
And
one
yeah.
clarification. He is number one in Google SEO. He maintains number one ranking on Google for digital marketing keyword. And that's a big deal. That's really a big deal.
Absolutely. Yeah. So definitely there are a lot of skills. I got a lot of value by just going through his website and his videos. And in fact, he builds like a lot of different tools in order to help companies in digital marketing. And thanks for sharing his advice and some of the learnings that you got from his blog as well. And one last question that I would ask you is, what do you think, what is that you wish you had known 10 years ago that you knew now that could help you back then?
Oh, so many things. I think, pretty much everything, I guess, right? I mean, see, I knew that I had to focus on my core expertise. I wish I had started working on my consulting expertise to start a startup rather than going for things like medical device, for which I had zero clue. Okay, zero experience in that industry. So I would never do anything that is going to be beyond my core expertise. So I became very, very, very focused lately. So the only advice I'm going to have, and the only thing that I would, if I could go back 10 years back, let's say, I would focus on my core expertise. I would utilize my time better. And I would respect, I would say, inbound marketing a lot more.
Wow, wow. Is there any other final advice that you wanted to give, especially for our audience?
Well, that's pretty much it. I would say stay to the core. The only other advice I'm going to have is, do not overthink, do not overplan, try to execute. Okay. When people say that, you probably need very sophisticated business plan, don't worry about all of that. Okay. Just build something that you can sell to investors and figure out how to execute it.
Hmm.
Start executing from day one. Build your KPIs and see if they are working or not. Build your cadence on a weekly basis, on a daily basis if possible,
Hmm.
and then see if you are being successful or not. So yeah, so focus more on execution. Plans don't feed us. They don't feed us. Execution does.
Hmm. Wow, it was just an awesome experience for me to actually talk to you and gain some great value add just by talking to you about marketing and sales. And one key insight that I got out of this whole talking in this podcast is stick to your core, stick to your strengths, and focus on the execution.
Yes.
And thank you once again, Sam. That is Sam. He's truly driven by doing. And I'll definitely share more details in the show notes so that you can also reach out to Sam to learn more about him and his consulting as well. Thank you so much for being on the show, Sam, once again. And I wish you all the very best for all the new ventures that you're going to take in the
Thank you
future.
so much, Venki, for having me. Really appreciate it.